Yay! Hello, everybody. Thanks, everyone who is tuning in. Casey Johnson here, one third of Visionary Blueprint with the amazing Nichole Eaton, another third of Visionary Blueprint. And as you guys know, if you've been listening, we kind of have this little fun series going on where we are talking about our personal journeys of how we've become business owners and our struggles and our successes and just real talk with you guys. I think if you've been listening to our podcasts, you understand that that's kind of our jam. We're just here to be real about business, right? And help you. That's our number one thing. And we have a lot of ways to do that. Nichole and I offer business audits. They're so fun. You guys, Nichole, how awesome are our business audits?
Oh my God, they're great. And it's so fun because you really don't see your own blind spots. But when I'm looking at somebody's website, I'm like, oh, if this were here, I would book this right now. Like those little things and little adjustments that can make you convert your clients and your sales just so much more effectively.
Yeah, and we have fun doing them. Literally, Nichole and I will get off of the call and we're like, "Oh my gosh, that is going to help her so much." And it's $97. You can book it on our website. There'll be a link in the show notes and you get about 20 minutes of Nichole and I on video going through. We've actually already audited it, but we kind of talk to you about the audit. And so it's just so helpful and such a great value.
Yeah, and
And
we go through landing pages, websites, social media. So it's not just your social media, it's not just your landing pages. It's here's how you're converting your message. Here's what we're thinking, because I think sometimes you think you're clear about your message and you think people understand what you do, or there's parts of things that you do. Like we had a really incredible photographer, and I had no idea she owned her own hair and makeup salon. And I was like, dude, an all-encompassing photographer who's gonna do your hair and makeup, why isn't this front page news? And so it's just small shifts. And I think one of the cool things too is Casey and I really also like to come up with ideas of how can you make more passive income on this? What can you do that would bring you more money? So anyway, we hope you book one of those with us.
Yeah, totally. And, we have a course coming out soon and just all of the things. Obviously, if you're not in our Facebook group, go join that immediately. It's Visionary Blueprint Collective,
Mhm.
right? So join that. You join our email list. You guys will be the first to hear everything that we've got going on. But today, Nichole is going to tell us a bit about her journey of how, she got into entrepreneurship and to build her business to where it is at the level now and just give us some insight. I think that when you guys can hear from us and kind of where we started and where we are now and things that we went through, um, you may relate to us. I've gotten some feedback actually just personally, and please DM us, you guys. We love it. Please find us on Instagram, Visionary Blueprint VIP, and DM us questions, comments, anything that maybe you found helpful or that you want to hear more about that you want us to elaborate on. Like we got one earlier and seriously, it made our day. All of the information, I was smiling from ear to ear. It touched me in my heart so much. And so you guys, we love to hear your feedback. So please do it. But yeah, without further ado, Nichole, if you don't mind kind of just taking us along your journey and letting us know how all this, we're all crazy where we're like, we can run our own business and do it all, right? And so I love hearing everyone's just story.
Um, Strap in.
Yeah, I'm ready.
My journey into entrepreneurship is pretty unconventional, I think. I think anyway. I had gotten in, I had gone for my master's degree in mental health counseling, and I got an internship working at a not-for-profit. Um, and they actually created a position for me when I graduated, which was wild. And everybody was really mad because apparently this not-for-profit, people were wanting to get into the general counseling program. And there was never any room. People were in their positions for 20, 30, 40 years. It was a place people stuck around. So when they created a position for me, it created a pretty big uproar.
Yeah. You were like, who is this girl?
Yeah, they all got these grants and funding for me, which was amazing. And my boss from there is actually somebody who I ended up starting my business with. But while I was working in general, counseling, I would, I started off in kind of like a normal way, right? Doing counseling, but there is something really like special that happens when you are working with people one on one in a really vulnerable, open hearted way.
Mhm.
And so I would be sitting with people and I would like say something and they'd be like, "Did I tell you that?" And I'm like, "You had to have. Like, how else would I know this?" And this was happening probably 3 to 4 times a day where somebody'd be like, "Did I tell you that? I feel like I haven't told anybody that ever." And I'm like, "Okay, this is, like, getting weird." So I went to my boss and I was like, "Has this ever happened to you? Like, that maybe you're, like, picking up on things or maybe it's body language," or I wasn't sure what it was, but I was starting to, like, pick up energy or read energy and know a little bit more about the person than they were telling me. It was
Mhm.
making me very effective at my job, but it was freaking me out. I'm like, do I need a mental health? Like, what's going on here? And so my boss that I was like telling this to, she was like, "Yeah, actually, this happens to me all the time. And the longer I've been doing this, like the more specific it gets." And I'm like, "Okay." So I'm not somebody who like takes things at face value. I also didn't grow up with any kind of religion. I didn't grow up with any kind of spirituality. I didn't grow up with any of that. So
Mhm.
I ended up starting to just read as many books as I could about like intuition and energy. And I started to understand it a little bit better, and I was like, "I need somebody to teach me how to do this more intentionally, um, so that it's not this random experience that I'm having, like, because I feel like this is a skill set that could help people."
Mhm.
And so I ended up going to train with a psychic medium, and I always, like, compare it to going to Hogwarts, right? Of, like, it was, like, this really, really wild experience of learning how to use my intuition in a really skillful way, in a way that helped me understand that it's not, like, it's not something that just happens to you. It's something you can be intentional about. That it's not like the devil's work, that it's something that everybody has, and it's a skill set. And so I started looking at it a lot different. And I started realizing that the energy piece was actually impacting people's ability to use their coping skills or to get out of certain mindsets or dealing with anxiety and depression. And so I realized the things I was learning with the psychic medium were not things I could do in a traditional health setting.
Mhm.
So I started trying to figure out like what does this new world look like? What am I creating here? And I went to my boss at the time, who was like, "I understand what you're saying. Like this is like pretty common for therapists." And it's so funny because now I meet therapists all the time. They're like, "Yes, I see that happens to me too." And I'm like, "Okay, so it's not just me." I'm not. I always tell people like with my intuition because it really freaks people out. Sometimes I'm like, I'm not special. I like literally learned how to use a skill set.
Mhm.
But you can't do that shit in mental health counseling.
Yeah.
So I actually teamed up with my boss and we opened a wellness center called Clarity. And obviously, it's really hard to go from, I was making $36,000 a year as a licensed mental health counselor. Like, I was making nothing. I think my payments were like $800 every other week or 860 or something really friggin' low and sad and crazy. Um, and so we didn't have money at the time. I had 2 little girls. My daughters were maybe like 2 and 4, 2 and 5, and we didn't have any money. My husband was, like, thinking of starting his own business, and I was like, "You know what? Let's just see what we can find." And so I ended up getting in contact with this guy who ran, like, kind of an office building. He's like, "I have an office that nobody wants. Do you want it?" And I'm like, why does nobody want it? It's because it's up the stairs, it's inaccessible, and you cannot get to it, like, by a wheelchair, and it has no windows at all, and, like, it's small as shit. You can fit, like, 2 chairs in here, but I can give it to you for, $200 a month. And so Christy and I decided that we would take this office for $200 a month. We would split it, and I would do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and she would do Tuesday, Thursdays. So I was paying like $100, a month, and yeah, and we started Clarity, and it went so well when I was able to kind of unapologetically do the work that I had been wanting to do,
Mhm.
and mix neuroscience with intuition and energy, and just like watching how much faster people were making progress when we could just like alchemize the energy that was holding them back from being able to think differently and do better for themselves. Because I feel like sometimes people know the answer and they know that they want more different, and it's like something in them can't. And that's the energy component that we can move and get rid of and transform, that helps people move forward. So this was a quite the journey, but yeah, I put in my 2 weeks notice and I just didn't look back. Like, I look at it now and I'm like, holy shit, that was just insane of me, first of all, because I have 2 little kids at home, and Brandon wasn't paying the bills either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Living off credit cards. We were considering bankruptcy at the time. Like, it wasn't the choice that, looking back now as a 37-year-old woman, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, but it ended up really growing quickly because nobody in the area could do what we were doing.
Yeah.
Um, and it ended up being like a really nice hub in the community. And we ended up getting a bigger office with windows, which windows matter in upstate New York when it's 10 feet of snow and you walk outside and you're like, I had no idea it's been snowing all day. Um, but yeah, Clarity was born in like 2012, 2013. And we just realized at some point that we could do whatever the fuck we wanted. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't have to play by anybody's rules. Um, and so we started doing, sessions, but we also started doing events. And we ended up, I applied for a TEDx in the area, and the person at the time who ran the TEDx did not like me. Didn't
Mm.
like what I was doing, didn't approve of the intuition and energy, because some people just don't understand that, and that's okay. But she basically told me to my face that I could apply a million times and she would absolutely never accept my application. So over
Haters gonna hate.
Oh my God, over some really good barbecue, I was like, I don't even know if I want to do that stuffy event anyway. Like, I want to do it and be able to talk about spirituality and be able to like have fun. And so Christy and I created this event called Clarity Connects. It ran for 6 years, basically until I moved. And we were pulling in 300 to 500 people a year with speakers from all across the globe, including Australia, that would come and speak for 10 to 12 minutes
Yeah.
on something that was life-changing. We had drag queens, we had a gospel choir, we had this like boy band. Like, we would just make it the most fun we could make. Like, how can we inspire and uplift people and just have a blast? Like, can we
Yeah.
call this time? Can we, like, what are some little stupid dreams? Like, we performed with the drag queens one time because I was like, if I were a man, I would be a drag queen. Like, I just feel that in my bones. And so like we just basically made it whatever we wanted, and it worked. Um,
Yeah.
and people, like, we actually just talked about maybe doing another one if if I end up going back for a time. But yeah, it was just like this aha moment that like we weren't under anybody's thumb anymore, we weren't under anybody's restrictions. And I think that professionalism is important, and I think that authenticity is even more relatable and even more
Mhm.
empowering and even more impactful.
And even more, what's the word? Just magnetic, basically, right? Like people want to be a part of something like that. They don't necessarily, sometimes I think like they feel or like they should go see a therapist, right? Like that's what I should do instead of going to. And so, what do you call yourself as
So
like intuitive therapist, right?
yeah, I call myself an intuitive therapist, just to make sure people understand that I'm not going to sit and talk about your problems all day. We're going to problem solve. I also think that they're doing enough research to understand that just sitting in negative energy for long periods of time isn't actually healing and helpful.
Helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think they're doing a lot of research to understand it. And I do think there is a little bit of I hate to use this catchphrase, but an awakening amongst people in mental health that there's better and different ways to do it. And when I was leaving, they actually started doing something called parts work. And so I went to a training through my company for parts work, which is kind of like the ability to communicate with different parts of your body of where it holds trauma. So I do a lot of parts work through energy and mindset, which is something that I really love to incorporate in my work, whether we're doing like business stuff or whether I'm doing the, personal intuitive therapy work.
Yeah, that's so cool. So, okay, you and Christy, you started Clarity. It's going amazing. You have your clients, you got your new office, you're doing these awesome events. And then what? Something brought you down south, And so how was that? Like, were you guys like, okay, we're gonna kind of do our own things, or, what kind of prompted that? And that's a big change, especially when things are going so well.
Yeah, I think that I was getting to a point with I had always wanted to move, and that's something I was transparent about before I even started working at the not-for-profit, to be honest. Like, I told her, I was like, "Hey, like, we're talking about moving south, and I would still love to take this position." And so I think that moving has always been on the table for me.
Mhm.
And the more I started kind of following my own path and my own, like, alignment, the more it became really clear, like, if you knew me in New York, I travel a lot now, but if you knew me in New York, that's all I did.
Mhm.
And I think it was just because I hated it so much and I was trying to escape it, and I would go someplace and I would just dread going home. Like, now when I go someplace, I'm like, "I'm ready to go home,"
Yeah.
because I think that there's different places in the world that, like, you like, settle and feel right?
Mhm.
Um, so I was really transparent with her that this was something that was on my heart and on my mind, and it didn't make any sense to do, to be honest. Like, if I'm being fully transparent, um, literally, the timing of it couldn't have really been worse. My business was absolutely thriving, um, and my husband was, like, getting ready a building to expand his business, and I just remember I came down here for New Year's Eve that year, and I, like, went to the Biltmore on New Year's Day, and I just, like, sat there and I just, like, wrote out my year. I'm a big manifester, and I just wrote out my year, and I was like, "Oh my god," just, like, waking up and it was 70 degrees that day, and I was like, "In January? Like, are you kidding me? We're not gonna see sun for another, like, 5 months in New York."
Yeah.
Um, and I went home and I was just, like, homesick for Charlotte. And it always took me a couple days to settle back in, and so I remember that I, like, brought it to Christy and I was like, "I'm having a hard time being in New York, and I'm having a hard time with the winters." Like, I get really bad, 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 bad seasonal depression. I
Mhm.
thrive when it's sunny. I thrive when it's blue skies, and, like, I don't know, but I feel like I'm not supposed to be here. And she, I think, obviously was like, "I'll honor and love whatever you want to do." And, like, that's the really great thing about working with people in therapeutics is they're like, "I don't like this, but if it makes you happy, I'll support it." Um,
Yeah.
and then I came down again in the end of July of that year, and I said to Brandon before I left, because he was like, "I'm either like, when we get home, if we don't make a decision, I am putting money down on this building." And our house at the time, we were trying to, like, do construction on, and the guy ghosted us. Like, our kitchen is torn apart, like, we're trying to remodel, and just the guy ghosted us. So, like, no condition to move, okay? So I'm here in Charlotte, and I'm like, "Brandon, I think this is where I belong." And he's like, "I feel that too." And I'm like, "Wanna lock in?" And he's like, "Yep." We went and looked at apartments for 2 days, threw money down on one, and, went to Merchant and Trade to celebrate, and came back, panicked, for a lot of reasons. I've gotta now tell Chrissy that I'm moving, not just around the corner, I'm moving several states away, and that this is going to be her on her own. Um, and, yeah, I mean, I just remember that conversation really vividly. We were sitting in her car and I'm like, "I don't even know how to say this to you, but, like, I know you want me to follow my heart, and I know that even though, like, this is hard, that you're still gonna be fine and thrive?" And, like, her dream was always to have a bigger wellness center, and that was never my dream? And that was the thing, is, like, I always felt like I would be off, like, traveling and speaking and doing those things, and then she loved more of that, like, one-on-one work and, like, would book her schedule out with 8 clients a day, and I was like, 5 and I'm done, you know? So,
Yeah.
I feel like, ultimately it was her path too. It was
Mhm.
hard. Obviously I paid my portion of the rent for our, until our, lease wrapped up, but I put money down on a place in August and we came here in November. And again, I got home and I was like, how are we going to finish this kitchen? Because this guy ghosted us to the point where he didn't even come back and take the money that we owed him.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know where he went, but yeah, it was crazy. And, yeah, we moved in November and it was just a really crazy. I don't wanna say it was impulsive because I had been thinking about it for so long, but I can imagine how impulsive it looked to everybody else.
Mhm.
And there was so many rumors that Christy and I had this big falling out. We didn't. I was so transparent from day one, and she knew that.
Yeah.
And she was so, like, respectful and, like, loving of my decision, even though it negatively impacted her. And so I'm really grateful for her. And her and I still do, like, retreats and stuff together. We still do stuff together, and I'm actually going to see her next week, in Philadelphia. So it's just, it's one of those things that sometimes when you make the decision that's right for you,
Mhm.
it is going to negatively impact other people, and it doesn't
It
mean it's wrong, you know?
totally 100%, and I think just, like, that's kind of a good life lesson for just life and business too, is like you said, it may have seemed or looked impulsive on the outside, but, on the inside, really between, like, you and yourself and you and your family, it was something you'd been thinking about for years, and so I just want kind of everyone listening to understand that, like, maybe it does look that way on the outside, but, like, who cares? It really doesn't matter what it looks like to anybody else. Like, if it's right for you, then truly that is all that matters, Like, Tyler and I got together very quickly, got pregnant very quickly. It was all, I know that some of my best friends were like, "She has lost her mind because of, like, what she went through," and so she's completely lost her mind. And but, like, in the intimate spaces, with we just were like, "If this is meant to be, like, this is meant to be," and our thing was like, "When you know, you know." That was just, like, our thing that we would say back and forth to each other. And, whatever that, like, intuition or that spirit or whatever it is inside of you too, it's like you can feel when it's right and it's, like, aligned, and you can totally feel when it's not,
Yeah.
And so it's like, cause I feel even now, I'm gonna be 39 in a couple weeks, and I'm still like, sometimes it's like, "Is this gonna look crazy to people? Or are they gonna think I'm doing too much?" Like, with starting Visionary Blueprint with you guys, it's like, "Oh, well, but she's already doing this, like, and now she's doing this, and she has 3 kids, and she homeschooled," right? And it's like, who cares? Like, you know what you're capable of, And if it's like, if something is guiding you, like, lean into that, you know?
You're the only person who has to wake up in your body and your mind and, like, in your feelings, and, like, I wanna be really clear that when I got here, I panicked. I didn't
Yeah.
know if I made the right choice. I missed my friends. I grew up in a really, really small town, and that's where I'm from, and that's where I had my wellness center, and so doing events was super easy because I just called the guy at the theater, and he would let me rent it out for the day, and he would provide food and drinks, and the bartender down the road would always get a license so they could set up, and it was just having those connections or walking into a place and just everybody I'm gonna run into at least 10 people while I'm out. And then I
Mhm.
got here and I'm like, "Fuck, I am invisible. Nobody can see me. Nobody even knows, like, what I just created." And then so there was, like, a really big period of time where I just felt like, "What did I do?" I
Mm.
just gave up a thriving business. I gave up the ability to have, like, clients just I've never had to do lead generation. Are you kidding me? Clients just came to me because they heard
Mhm.
about it from their aunt or their cousin or their best friend. Like, I've never had to try to create business in a place that I'm not already known. And that's honestly what part of the reason I love Visionary Blueprint is because I had to figure that out when I got here. And I
Mhm.
had to study marketing, and I had to study branding, and I had to study storytelling, and I had to study, like, social media, and I had to, like, do the work to understand what makes these things click into place because I got here and it was me and Christy at our wellness center, and, of course, if people wanted to see somebody in person, they were gonna stay with her, and I totally respected that. So I lost half my clients,
Mhm.
didn't wanna do a session over the phone, which I totally get, but, like, and then I'm in a place where I'm not getting leads because nobody
Yeah.
knows who I am and nobody knows what I do. So, it was quite the choice in terms of business for me, and I still feel like I'm just getting my bearings 6 years later, where I'm getting invited to speak places and people wanna work with me and buy my books and stuff. So, it's like, I'm still rebuilding.
Mhm.
I'm still rebuilding 6 years into it, um, but I've learned so much about myself in the process and so much about business in the process because I had to. Not everything is gonna be just floating your direction, you know? I think there's a lot of things we can create and manifest, but there's also a lot of the work that we have to do, you know?
Totally. Yeah. I love that. You know, and just thank you for being honest about that because I feel like people could like be looking on the outside, right? And like, oh man, it's just like all these Instagram followers and you've got two books out and and it's like they would have no idea that you've rebuilt for 6 years but it's a real thing and like you said, you've just learned so much. Like you could go and start any kind of business now, right? You literally know all the pieces and all the aspects of what it takes. And so there is so much value in that. Like it may not be like as easy as kind of being able to do it in a small town where everybody knows you and everybody like wants to book, but there's so much value now in what you can offer other people who are trying to start and either build like from scratch or rebuild or whatever the case may be. And so, which is just like so awesome for Visionary Blueprint too, and anyone who's kind of becomes a part of this community. Um, well, lastly, before we get off here, is there anything that you would say or any tips, advice, um, just motivation, life giving material for anyone who's listening to this, and they either want to jump into entrepreneurship or, like you said, they kind of are starting over in a brand new place and they're like, what did I just do? Like, what would, if you could kind of go back to yourself when you were doing all of this, what would you say?
This is a really unpopular opinion, but ditch your plan B.
Love
Don't give
that.
yourself a backup, don't give yourself an out. Figure out how to make it work. Study up, watch there's so much free content on YouTube. There's so many incredible business books, everything. Binge everything by Donald Miller. I could listen to that man speak all day because he is a genius and he makes it simple. He wrote a book called Business Made Simple,
Writing
Story
this.
Branding Made Simple. I have literally read everything this man has wrote. If I ever meet him in real life, I will shake his hand because he helped me tremendously figure out how to get the word out about my business. And so don't give yourself an out if it's something you want to do. Like sometimes you do have to just go all in because I don't think we do what we should do. I think we do what we have to do. And I got to a point around that year 3 and then COVID was fresh and I was like, what am I doing with my life? Can I actually make this work? And it was like, I'm unemployable. I don't I don't want to ask somebody for a vacation. I take 75 of them a year. Like I don't want to. I love my freedom and I love my life and I have to figure out how to reach the people I'm meant to reach. So don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Treat it like school if you have to. Treat it like school in the respect that you pencil out 30, 40 minutes. Like I like to learn while I walk. Right now I'm watching Gossip Girl, so that's not a good example, but usually I'm listening to marketing branding podcasts. Usually I'm listening to I love Chris Do. It's The Future on YouTube. He's
Mhm.
incredible. He talks about things in a really realistic way. I love listening to information by Myron Golden. He's fantastic. But all of these people are know the things that you don't know yet, and they have a lot to offer you. So go find the people who resonate with you and where you're at. Cody Sanchez is another really good one. If you're into real estate, Pace Mosby, something like that. But it's don't give yourself an out if it's something you want to do. Sure, if you're like broke and you're scraping by, you can always get a job. You know how to like I always say you know how to like mow lawns, right? You know what I mean? I know how to clean a house if I needed to. I grew up, my mom owned a, like clean people's houses growing up and I'd go help her. Like at the end of the day, you know how to do the dirty work, you know how to get a job. Like go all in on yourself and try to figure it out along the way because if you give yourself a plan B, you're not going to go all in. That's
That's
just
true.
how it is. If you have
Yeah.
out, you're going to make an excuse for why you can't do it. And instead of figuring it out, you're going to back out.
Mhm. So good. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. Everybody, thank you for listening. We will have all the info in the show notes if you want to book an audit with us. If you want to get easy first access to the course when we have that launch, you can get on the like early bird list. And like I said, subscribe to our podcast if you can, give us a rating if you can. We're on all the platforms and join our Facebook group for sure. We would love to chat with you guys.
Yes, yes. And we also have our business breakthrough bootcamp that is available. I'll drop the link in the bio as well. But you can also catch that over in the Facebook group. There's three lessons. It's marketing, branding, and sales with a top 8-figure CEO. And it's so good. It's so good. And it's free, more importantly. So check us
Yeah.
out over there. And we'll catch you next time.
Bye, guys.